Emery Foster didn't realize she'd grabbed the wrong laptop until she opened it on the subway and saw a presentation titled Quinn Nolan Holdings Acquisition Strategy for Global Merge. She blinked. Definitely not her resume. Her heart stopped. She'd been rushing out of the cafe near Bryant Park, juggling her oat milk latte and her nerves after her third failed job interview this week. She must have picked up someone else's identical black laptop from the table she shared with a stranger in a navy suit. No, 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 she whispered, staring at the unfamiliar desktop. This is not happening. She slammed it shut. Her anxiety shot through the roof as she clutched it to her chest. The man from earlier had been on the phone, intense and clearly important. His laptop was probably worth more than her rent. Panic rising, she got off at the next stop and rushed back toward the cafe. But he wasn't there anymore. Emery stood on the sidewalk, gripping the laptop, trying not to cry. She didn't have his number. No business card. Nothing. Then she remembered he left a silver monogrammed pen on the table. She tossed it into her purse without thinking when she was cleaning up her side. She fished it out and turned it over. Quinn Nolan. Her breath caught. She knew that name. Everyone in New York did. Quinn Nolan was the elusive, ridiculously private billionaire CEO of Nolan Holdings. The same man who never gave interviews, never showed up to launch events, and definitely didn't sit in public cafes. But it was him. And she had his laptop. Oh my God, she muttered, staring down at the sleek device like it was a nuclear bomb. She didn't expect him to find her the very next morning. Emery was working a temp front desk job at a midtown accounting firm, dressed in a blazer that didn't quite fit and flats that pinched her toes. She was halfway through alphabetizing mail packages when the elevator doors opened. 2 security guards stepped out first. Then came the man himself. He looked exactly like she remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored dark gray coat over a black suit. His jaw was sharp, his eyes serious, and his presence? Immediate. Her stomach did a somersault. He spotted her instantly. You, he said, his voice low and smooth. You took my laptop. I did, but not on purpose, Emery stammered, heat rushing to her cheeks. I thought it was mine. Our laptops looked exactly the same, and I was in a rush, and I relax, he said, stepping closer. I'm not here to press charges. She blinked. You're not. No. I just want my laptop back. Oh. Emery bent down, pulling the laptop from her tote bag under the desk. I brought it just in case. I didn't know how to reach you, and he took it gently, his fingers brushing hers. You didn't open anything? I saw the title of one file. That's it. I swear. He studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, his mouth tugged into something close to a smile. I believe you. Relief washed over her. Thank you. I really didn't mean to cause a problem. You didn't, actually. He hesitated, then leaned on the desk, looking at her like he was trying to figure something out. You left behind your resume. Her eyes widened. Wait, what? In the folder on the table. I opened it by mistake. Thought it was part of my files. You're a writer. She flushed, trying to be. I haven't had much luck. You're talented, he said, surprising her again. I read your sample. The short story about the woman on the fire escape? It was good. Her mouth parted. You read it. He nodded. You've got something. Emery couldn't breathe for a second. She felt like she was spinning, like her life had just swerved into a completely different direction. Then he said, come to my office tomorrow. I have a team that handles editorial content for our media division. I want you to meet them. She stared at him. Is this a joke? No, he said simply. It's an opportunity. The next day, Emery found herself in a private elevator that led to the top floor of the Nolan Holdings building. The entire space was glass, steel, and money. She'd never seen anything so polished in her life. Quinn met her at the elevator. No assistant. No guards. Just him. You clean up well, he said with a small smile, eyeing the navy dress she borrowed from her cousin. She tried to laugh. I still feel like I don't belong here. You do, he said, leading her past glass-walled conference rooms and into his office. I make the decisions around here. And I say you do. His office was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked all of Manhattan. A sleek black desk stood near the window, and behind it a bar cart with crystal decanters. It looked like a movie set. He offered her a seat on the leather couch. I'm not going to pretend I do this often. I don't find talent in cafes. But there was something about your story. The way you wrote about loneliness. It felt honest. She swallowed. That means more than you know. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees. I want to help. Not because I pity you, but because I think you're good. And because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Her breath caught. What? I know it sounds insane, he said, voice lower now. But I haven't. She stared at him, stunned. He leaned closer. You walked into my life by accident. But now that you're in it, Emery, I don't want you to walk back out. She opened her mouth to speak, but her thoughts were tangled in shock. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just want a chance to get to know you. And if that means we only work together, fine. But if there's something more. There was a pause. Emery's heart was pounding like a drum. I want to find out. She didn't know what to say. What she did know was that when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see the billionaire who ruled corporate empires. She saw the man who read her story and saw her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. She nodded slowly. Okay. His eyes warmed. Okay. Let's find out. The first time Emery stepped into the editorial wing of Nolan Media, she nearly turned around and ran. It wasn't just the polished wood floors that gleamed like water or the towering glass walls that made the space feel like some elite think tank. It was the people, confident, fashionable, fast-talking professionals who clearly knew exactly where they belonged. Emery didn't. She stood near the entrance in her blazer with a missing button and a portfolio under her arm, wondering how long it would take before someone asked her to leave. But before anxiety could fully take hold, a poised woman in a burgundy blouse approached. You must be Emery Foster, she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I'm Rhea. Quinn asked me to give you a tour. Emery shook her hand, trying not to let her nerves show. Nice to meet you. He mentioned your writing, Rhea said as she led her past a series of open workspaces. Said it had bite. That's rare. We usually get people who want to sound smart, not honest. They passed a wall covered with framed magazine covers, all bearing the Nolan Media insignia. One caught Emery's eye, a black and white portrait of a young woman staring defiantly into the camera, the headline beneath it reading, Unfiltered. You'll be working with the features team, Rhea continued. Mostly cultural pieces and first-person narratives. We just lost one of our freelancers, so the timing is good. Emery's heart skipped. Wait, I'm actually working here? I assumed you knew that, Rhea said, glancing over her shoulder. Quinn told me to put you on the rotation. You're starting this week. She blinked. I thought this was just a meeting. Rhea stopped in front of a corner desk with a slim monitor and a view of the Chrysler building. It was. Then he read your piece. It took Emery a moment to find words. I don't know what to say. You'll figure it out, Rhea said, already moving away. We all did. Later that afternoon, Emery found herself in a quiet conference room with Quinn. It wasn't planned. He texted Rhea asking her to send Emery up after her onboarding. He stood near the window, his tie loosened, a single sleeve rolled up. He looked more like an architect sketching blueprints than a CEO. You settled in? He asked without turning. I think so, she said, stepping inside. They gave me a desk. He glanced at her, amused. It's not much, but it's yours. I didn't expect this, she admitted. I feel like I skipped about 7 steps. You didn't, he said, facing her fully now. You've done the work. The only thing you skipped was the waiting. She studied him carefully. Why are you doing this? Really? His expression shifted just slightly. Because I remember what it's like to send things out and never hear back. To wonder if you're wasting your time. You don't seem like someone who ever doubted himself. He looked at her for a long moment. Then I hide it well. She took a breath. And what happens now? You write, he said simply. You pitch. You get your name out there. And if you ever feel like you're losing your voice, come talk to me. Emery hesitated. Is that normal? For people to talk to you directly? No, he said. But I'm not interested in normal. There was something in the way he said it, quiet, sure, that made her pulse quicken. Before she could respond, he added, I have a dinner tonight. Formal event. Boring people. Empty conversation. Come with me. She blinked. To a business dinner? Technically a gala, he said. But there's food. Music. And I'd rather not go alone. She hesitated. Won't people talk? Let them. I don't exactly own anything gala appropriate. He leaned back against the window ledge. Then we'll fix that. She narrowed her eyes. What does that mean? You'll see. An hour later, Emery stood frozen in the middle of a private showroom on Fifth Avenue. It wasn't a store. There were no price tags, no salespeople hovering. Just velvet-lined racks, a mirror that stretched from floor to ceiling, and a stylist who introduced herself as Kasia and brought her espresso in a porcelain cup. I'm not wearing anything that costs more than my student loans, Emery whispered as Kasia approached with a deep blue gown that shimmered faintly under the lights. Kasia only smiled. You'll feel different once it's on. Quinn sat on a leather settee near the window, watching with the kind of quiet attention that made her nerves flare. He hadn't said a word about the price, or the room, or the fact that Emery had never seen a ceiling chandelier that looked like modern art. She disappeared into the dressing room, heart pounding. When she stepped out, the room fell silent. The gown fit like it had been made for her, structured but fluid, with a neckline that framed her collarbones and a back that dipped just enough to make her feel like someone else entirely. Quinn stood slowly. His gaze traveled over her in a way that made her skin heat, but his voice was calm when he finally said, Perfect. She swallowed. It's too much. It's not enough. She looked at him, unsure what to say. Then he reached for a velvet box on the table. When he opened it, she saw a pair of earrings, delicate sapphires set in white gold. I'm not accepting jewelry, she said quickly. They're borrowed, he replied. For tonight. She stared at him. You're really good at this. At what? Making people feel like they belong in places they never imagined. He met her eyes. You do belong, Emery. And for the first time, she let herself believe it. The gala was held at the Astoria Grand, a gold and marble palace of a hotel so opulent Emery thought she might trip just from looking up at the ceiling. There were real orchids suspended in glass sculptures, and the scent of something expensive, jasmine, maybe hung in the air like a promise. She stood beside Quinn on the top step of the ballroom, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet, while murmurs rippled through the crowd below. Everyone's staring, she whispered. They always do, he replied without looking away from the room. But not usually at me. She turned to him, startled. His gaze slid to hers, steady and unreadable. You're the only unexpected thing in this room. Before she could respond, a man with salt and pepper hair and a tuxedo that probably cost more than her education approached, holding 2 champagne flutes. Quinn, finally. I was starting to think you'd abandoned these things for good. Quinn took 1 flute without ceremony. I almost did. The man's eyes flicked to Emery. And this is? Quinn didn't hesitate. Emery Foster. She reached out, her fingers cool against the man's handshake. Pleasure, the man said, though his tone clearly measured her. You work with Nolan Holdings? Quinn answered for her. She's a writer with Nolan Media. The man let out a sound that might have been a chuckle. Ah, the creative side. Dangerous territory. Before Emery could reply, Quinn turned to her with a quiet firmness. This is Marcus Brandt. He runs a fund that buys up every magazine we say no to. Marcus raised his glass. That's one way to describe it. Emery didn't miss the shift in Quinn's posture. Nothing aggressive, just a slight straightening, a coiled awareness. She wondered how often he had to play the game like this, surrounded by men who smiled with their teeth. Excuse us, he said, already guiding her away. They moved through the ballroom, past crystal chandeliers and clusters of murmuring VIPs who gave Quinn respectful nods and curious glances at her. The string quartet in the corner played something haunting and slow. You didn't have to defend me, she said softly. I wasn't, he replied. I was introducing you. He stopped near the edge of the balcony that overlooked the dance floor, the city glittering beyond the glass behind them. You're not playing a role tonight, Emery, he said. You're not here as a guest. You're here because I wanted you here. She looked out at the skyline, then back at him. This world feels like it's made of glass. You get used to it. I don't want to get used to it. Quinn studied her face. Good. They were silent for a moment, the music drifting up from below. Then Emery said, You don't strike me as someone who brings people to these things. Ever. You're right. She hesitated. So why me? He didn't answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was quieter than she'd heard it before. Because I haven't wanted to share anything until now. Her breath caught. Quinn looked away, jaw tight. My father used to say that the higher you build your life, the fewer people you can afford to let inside it. Is that why you're always alone at these things? I got used to it. She stepped closer. But you don't want to be anymore? He turned then, eyes meeting hers fully. Not with you. A string of notes from the quartet below slid up into a crescendo, but Emery barely heard it over the thrum in her chest. Dance with me, Quinn said. She blinked. Now? He didn't wait for an answer. He took her hand and led her down the staircase, past the murmurs and glances, onto the dance floor. When he pulled her into his arms, the music seemed to recede, replaced by the rhythm of their shared silence. You're not much of a dancer, she murmured after a few turns. No, he said, but you move like someone who's used to being underestimated. She looked up at him. That's supposed to be a compliment? It's meant to be a mirror. He twirled her, then caught her again, his hand at her waist, more confident now. You're not what I expected, he said. What were you expecting? I don't know. He paused. Someone who wanted something from me. Emery tilted her head. And you don't think I want something? I think you want it for the right reasons. Her voice was quiet. You don't know me that well. Not yet. The song faded into another, but they didn't stop moving. Then a woman in a black jumpsuit with diamond shoulder clasps approached, interrupting. Quinn, they're asking for you at the head table. He exhaled. Of course they are. She gave Emery a brief once-over, not unkind, just curious, and disappeared as quickly as she came. He looked at Emery. You okay if I disappear for a few minutes? Go, she said. I'll be fine. He hesitated, then leaned close. Don't let anyone talk you into anything. Especially if they're smiling. She laughed, and he left with one last glance. As soon as he was gone, a woman in a plum-colored gown approached. Her tone was friendly, but her eyes held the sharpness of someone used to getting what she wanted. So you're the mystery date, she said. Emery nodded cautiously. I guess I am. He doesn't usually bring people. So I've heard. The woman sipped her drink. And yet, here you are, wearing Armani couture and dancing with the most ungettable man in Manhattan. Emery held her gaze. That sounds like a problem for someone else. The woman smiled, amused. Touché. She walked off, leaving Emery alone once more. The orchestra played on, the glittering world spinning around her. And for the first time that night, Emery realized something. She hadn't been handed a golden ticket. She'd been given a door. And now she had to decide whether to walk through it. Rain tapped against the windows of Quinn's penthouse, soft and steady, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and silver. Emery stood near the open balcony doors, barefoot on the stone floor, holding a cup of tea in both hands. The silk robe she wore, borrowed midnight blue, brushed her knees as the wind curled around her. Quinn stepped beside her, fresh from a call, his expression unreadable. I didn't mean to stay this long, she said, not quite looking at him. You didn't have to leave either, he replied. She glanced at him. This place is. I know, he said. It's a lot. No. It's peaceful. That's the part one didn't expect. He leaned on the doorframe, hands in the pockets of his slacks. It wasn't always. I used to fill it with people. Events. Noise. Anything to drown out the quiet. Emery turned to face him fully. Why? He hesitated. Because silence is honest. And I wasn't ready for that. Her voice was quiet. What changed? You. Neither of them spoke for a beat. Then he stepped closer, his tone shifting. There's something I need to tell you before we go any further. Her fingers curled around the mug. Okay. When you took my laptop, he said, there was something on it. A file I was preparing. It's about a buyout. A merger with a company that owns one of the literary imprints you've submitted to before. Her brows pulled together. Why does that matter? Because I declined the deal, he said. But not before I read through everything, including old submission records. Your name came up. She stared at him. You knew about me before the cafe? No, he said quickly. But after the mix-up, I recognized the coincidence. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want you to think this was orchestrated. Emery set the mug down on the glass table. So you read my work before we met, but didn't know it was me. He nodded. And once I found out, I didn't want to touch the deal. I didn't want anything to feel tainted for you. She walked past him, needing space to think. The penthouse stretched open behind her, cool, modern, breathtaking, and for the first time, it felt like a place where decisions had consequences. I don't know what to do with that, she admitted, stopping at the edge of the kitchen island. I don't think I'm angry. I just need a second. I understand. She turned to him. Do you? Yes, he said. Because I've spent years building walls to protect everything I own, and now the one thing I want is standing in front of me, questioning whether any of this is real. Emery crossed her arms, unsure whether to cry or scream. Tell me something, she said. If none of this had happened, the laptop, the resume, would you have ever noticed me? He walked to her then, slow and deliberate, stopping only when he was close enough that she could hear the shift of his breath. I see 100 faces a day, people who want something, who play roles, who never say what they mean. But you sat across from me in a cafe and didn't care who I was. You rushed out with the wrong laptop and left behind a piece of yourself. His voice lowered. I've never seen anyone more clearly in my life. Her throat tightened. I didn't fall for your story, he said. I fell for the person who wrote it. Emery felt something shift in her chest, something too big to name. She reached for the counter behind her, grounding herself. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he said. But I'd rather be afraid with you than safe without you. There was a long silence between them, the kind that stretched and twisted, waiting to be broken. Then come with me, he said. Tomorrow. She blinked. Where? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the far side of the room and returned with a small envelope. He handed it to her. Inside was a boarding pass. First class. Destination, Paris. Emery looked up, stunned. You're serious? There's a publishing summit. I'm giving a keynote. I want you there. Not for the company. For me. She stared at the boarding pass, then at him. You're asking me to run away with you. I'm asking you to leap. Her heart pounded. I've never been on a plane that didn't serve pretzels and plastic. He smiled genuinely this time. They serve champagne up front. She laughed, then covered her mouth. I don't even have a passport, she said. You do, he replied. Your application was expedited. Ria took care of it. It's already at your desk. Her eyes widened. You planned this. I hoped, he said. That's different. Emery sat down on the bar stool, overwhelmed. What happens if I say yes? Then we figure the rest out together. And if I say no? He stepped closer, gently brushing her hair behind her ear. Then I'll still be waiting when you're ready. She closed her eyes, letting the weight of it all settle. When she opened them, she whispered, I don't want to be afraid anymore. Then don't be. The next morning, the sun rose over Manhattan in soft hues of peach and silver. And Emery Foster stepped onto a private jet, hand in hand with a man who had once been a stranger in a cafe and now held her heart in his. As the plane lifted off, she looked at him. What do we tell people? Quinn leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead. That sometimes the wrong laptop leads you to exactly the right person. And somewhere above the clouds, they began again. Rain clung to the windows of the Paris suite like watercolor, the city beyond glowing soft and golden in the early evening. Emery stood at the edge of the terrace, wrapped in a cashmere shawl Quinn had handed her earlier, her bare feet brushing cool stone as the Eiffel Tower blinked in the distance. Inside, he was speaking French into a phone, sharp, fluid, commanding. She didn't understand the words, but the way his voice moved through the space made her stomach tighten, with something that felt dangerously close to forever. She still couldn't believe she'd said yes. Couldn't believe she was here. Quinn ended the call and stepped out beside her, slipping his arm around her waist without hesitation. His touch was warm, grounding. "They've confirmed your pass for tomorrow," he said. "You'll be on the panel." Her eyebrows lifted. "Wait, the publishing panel? I thought I was just attending." "You're not just attending anything anymore," he said, brushing a kiss against her temple. "They read your piece from last week. The one about the woman who keeps a suitcase packed for a life she hasn't lived yet." Her stomach flipped. "They want me to speak on that?" "They want your voice," he said. "And they should." She leaned into his side, the warmth of his body anchoring her against the surreal blur of the last week. "You really don't believe in letting people go unnoticed? Not when they deserve to be seen." She turned to look at him. "What if I mess it up?" "You won't," he said. "But if you do, I'll be the first to stand and tell the room they're wrong." Emery laughed, biting her lip. "You're a lot more intense than you pretend to be." "I don't pretend," he said. "I just reserve it for the people who matter." A knock at the door interrupted them. Quinn didn't move right away. Instead, he looked at her for a long moment, eyes steady. "Before I answer that, there's something I've been avoiding." Her heart stilled. "What is it?" "I canceled the merger that brought your name across my desk," he said. "But the board pushed back after we left. They want to reopen negotiations." Emery's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because they still see value in the acquisition. And they think I've become compromised." She stepped back. "Compromised how?" "They think you're a conflict of interest." Emery exhaled, jaw tightening. "And are you?" "I told them I'd walk before I let them touch anything connected to you," he said. "And I meant it." Her throat tightened. "You'd give that up?" "I already have," he said. "I sent the final rejection this morning." The knock came again, this time more insistent. "You should answer that," she said quietly, trying to process. But he didn't move. "You matter more than a deal, Emery." She looked at him, unsure if she wanted to cry or kiss him. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," he replied. "Just stay." The door opened behind them. Rhea stepped in, dressed in pale gray, a tablet in hand. "I'm not interrupting anything, am I?" she asked, glancing between them. "Not anymore," Quinn said. "What is it?" "There's a cancellation on the main stage," she said, handing Emery the tablet. "They want her to close the session. Final keynote." Emery's eyes widened as she scanned the screen. "This can't be real." "It is," Rhea said. "You're the only one people have been talking about." The piece went viral on the flight over. Quinn smiled faintly. "Told you." Rhea gave her a smaller device. "This is synced to the teleprompter if you want it. But they prefer you speak from the heart." "I don't even know what I'd say," she murmured. Quinn touched her hand. "Say the truth." That's how this all started. Later that night, Emery stood behind the velvet curtain, listening to the applause from the speaker before her. Her palms were damp, but her spine remained straight. And then she walked out. The lights hit her in a warm wash. The room was full. Editors. Authors. Executives. She found Quinn in the second row, his expression calm, his gaze locked on her. She took a breath. "When I was 15, she began, I wrote a story about a girl who lived in a house with no windows. She didn't know what she was missing until someone knocked on her wall. The crowd leaned in. I didn't know that story was about me until recently," she continued. "We spend so much time believing the world is locked behind glass that only certain people get to touch it. But sometimes someone hands you a key by accident. And sometimes that accident changes everything." She paused, then smiled. "I'm not here because of luck. I'm here because someone took a chance. And because I finally stopped being afraid of what might happen if I reached for more." The applause started slowly, then swelled. And as she stepped down, Quinn met her halfway. He didn't wait. He kissed her. Right there, in front of everyone. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't careful. It was real and certain and full of every promise he hadn't yet spoken. When they pulled apart, he whispered, "Let's go home." "Which one?" she asked, breathless. He smiled softly, brushing his fingertips along her cheek. "Whichever one you want to build." Months passed quietly, and then all at once, The apartment they chose overlooked the park, filled with books and warmth and the scent of orange peels in winter. Emery's writing found a home in print and online, and eventually on shelves. She kept the first check framed above her desk not for the money, but because Quinn had written one word in the memo line. Finally, he proposed beneath the canopy of a bookstore she loved, slipping a sapphire ring onto her ink-stained finger. She said yes before he finished the question. They married in a garden surrounded by people who had once only existed on the periphery of their lives. Marcus Brandt sent a bottle of vintage champagne with a note that simply read, "You win." Quinn danced with her until the sky turned lavender. And when the music faded and the world turned quiet again, they didn't fill it with noise. They filled it with each other. And that was more than enough.